Someone close, yes.
You know, one time when I was doing my PhD, we used to have our lunch together, and we were speaking about haram food in Islam. And they asked me about why it's haram. And I explained it from the point of view of science, about the digestive system for them. Then one of them asked the question, said, if it's haram, why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created pigs?
Look, I mean, let me thank you for that. And you're probably more qualified than I am to speak about the scientific aspects of this inquiry. But what I'll do is I'll use this question to tell people how what's my framework of dealing with a question or a shubha or a doubt that people have. And I call it the APECA framework, A-P-E-C-A. This is a blueprint that I have. So when someone asks me a question about Islam, it's an acronym. A stands for assumption. So whenever someone asks you a question, you have to look at what the assumption of the question is. Because a lot of the fallacious aspects, the faulty understanding is in the assumption. And then P stands for point, E is for evidence, C is for the counter-argument, some may say, and then A is for analysis. We'll come back to this framework later on. The point is, if someone says, well, why did Allah make pig haram? The Quran doesn't state why. Okay, in usul fiqh there's two things. There's something called illa and hikmah. Illa is the causative reasoning for why something is haram or not haram. And the hikmah is the wisdom behind it. Now we can speculate what the wisdom for something is. We can speculate. As Muslims we can say it's because of this reason, this scientific reason or whatever. But we don't know for sure. The fact is, this is ta'abbudi, which means, because Allah said it. Now that might sound like a cop-out. But it's not a cop-out because we submit to the higher authority of Allah. When you go to the doctors, you are unqualified. You don't know, especially even if you're a doctor, you might need to go and see a specialist. You sit down, humble in front of the authority, which is the doctor. You tell him your symptoms, and then he prescribes or she prescribes whatever it is they may prescribe. Why? Because you accept the knowledge authority of that doctor. Now, once if you have the same relationship with the Quran, where you accept the knowledge authority of the Quran, then these questions become quite superfluous. If God is indeed the all-knowing, the all-wise, then He knows what's best for the human being from all three dimensions, mind, body, and soul. From the individual perspective and the collective perspective. So that's the first thing. The second thing, the assumption here, the faulty assumption, of course, is that God wouldn't create something that would be edible by human beings. I'm sure the pig has some kind of ecological function in the food chain. It doesn't have to be that God only creates things that we eat. This is a faulty assumption, and therefore the entire interrogation falls. The flat-footed assumption falls at the first hurdle. There's no question here to be asked. Because the assumption is, God only creates animals which human beings have to eat. It's a nonsense assumption. It could be part of the food chain, it could be part of the ecological system. I don't know what pigs eat. I mean, they eat, I don't know what, wild boar and whatever. I haven't seen, I'm not an expert at this, right? But they eat something which is then eaten by this. And you take one animal out of the food chain, you've got a real problem here. And we learn from animals. We learn not just what to be like, but what not to be like. And some animals learn from us. This is the way the world works. We're imitative creatures. So everything has a purpose. And this is really a fallacy. It's called the argument from ignorance. It's called an argument from ignorance fallacy, informal fallacy, which is just because you don't know the function of something, it must mean it's wrong. So for these reasons, I would say we don't know why Allah created pigs exactly, but you can hazard a guess, and I think when you look at the wider ecology, there is good grounds to say that if pigs weren't there, you'd have lots of problems in the food chain.